This is If My People Bible Reading, Part 157 in the Book of Daniel. Glasses are slowly changing. Sorry, I went out for a bicycle ride outside. Uh, we'll start right into it. We are in chapter 8 in the Book of Daniel. And what I want you to catch is this. All these visions, all these, all this knowledge that Yahweh gave Daniel, and Daniel wrote it down in his typical fashion, probably perfect. He wrote in Arabic. He put it in the style of the Babylonian type of historical facts, and then he got into visions dealing with the rise of the kingdoms of Alexander the Great and so forth, and then his four generals. He changes the style. He goes into Hebraic writing, which is interesting because it's to the understanding of, listen, Nebuchadnezzar, all these other leaders after you, and especially you. Daniel says to him, you need to ask Yahweh for forgiveness. You need to repent. He told that to Nebuchadnezzar. He told Nebuchadnezzar all the things that were going to happen to him. And then Nebuchadnezzar said, and all these things, he believed it. He didn't do one thing to repent. He did not do one thing. And all of his visions and everything that happened, nothing was prevented from what happened to the kingdom of Medo-Persia. They fell. They did not listen one iota to Daniel's advice. So everything that Daniel wrote down was of no value whatsoever to the kingdom that of then and shortly afterwards to its fall. Nothing. Not until the Grecians came and took it all away. Just leave that in your mind. Because when you read the book of Daniel, you're thinking, well, this is one of the greatest prophecy books ever written. Really? And the answer is yes. But was it listened to? Any of it? None of it. Daniel was even saying in 7:19, he wanted to know. I want to know, Yahweh. You're telling me all these things. What does this mean? What does that mean? What is the fourth beast? Why is the fourth beast so different from the other beasts? And why is the one beast thrown away in the fire and the other four are allowed to go for their way? And Yahweh kind of points it out to him. This is all about the future. The book of Daniel was written for the last days. Us. It was written for us. And I keep telling you, unless you've read the other total of 16 prophets and all these minor prophets, you're not going to understand it. And then put that together with Ezekiel and Isaiah, which Isaiah is just the image of the life of Yeshua from beginning to end. It's his entire life until his death and resurrection. That's what the book of Isaiah is. So that's where Paul gets all his information. Now, Gamaliel, how do we know that the people that were around Paul, that Paul studied under, how do we know that they weren't really into the Word? Did they listen? Did they not listen? Well, okay, let's go to the very next chapter, chapter 8. In the third year of King Belshazzar's reign, I, Daniel, had a vision after the one that had already appeared to me. That was in chapters 6 and 7. So that's in line. But Hebraic and life itself, Yahweh is circle. He's a circle type of person. He circles around the wagons and he tells you over and over and over again. He's not linear. He doesn't warn you like a father. Son, don't do that. If not, I'm going to whack you one. And then the son doesn't do it, so the father goes in and whacks the son. That's linear. The father's very patient here. Abba Father's very patient. He goes around and around. He doesn't give you a warning or two. He gives you a lot of warnings. And then he acts. And then he even, like a play, he even shows you in Act 1 what happens. Goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. Then he goes to Act 2, and it's the same thing. He shows you over and over again. That's his patience. That's not his forgetfulness. He does it on purpose. He does it for you. So that's why, as we get towards the end of the book of Daniel, Yahweh says, close up this book and keep it. Now, that doesn't mean keep it from everyone forever. Just me and you are going to know about it. I, the Father, and you, Daniel, and nobody else knows. Does Daniel know? Yes. Does he tell you point blank, like, could he have named names and dates today, in today's, right now? His way future, could he have probably been seeing names and dates and locations? Even names of countries and names of presidents, names of crazy dictators. Very well. But he shut the book. We didn't get to see that part. Chapter 8, verse 11. It set itself up to be as great as the prince of the host. It took away the daily sacrifice from him in the place of his sanctuary and was brought low. So during the Maccabean era, hundreds of years before Yeshua came to the earth for the first advent, the sacrifice, the daily sacrifice, it took away the daily sacrifice for him, meaning many things. But one of the meanings was this: were any of the sacrifices after the Babylonian return, Hezekiah's temple, the reign of Hezekiah, the Nehemiah, during that era, when the first inferior temple, and then later on the Herod's temple that was built upon, made grander. Herod wanted to make it magnificent. Were any of those sacrifices of any value whatsoever? The answer is no. No. So Yeshua, when he walked into the temple area during Solomon's porch and so forth, by the way, Solomon's porch, when Yeshua was on Solomon's porch, he was not in the temple. He was in the Gentile area. That's what everyone claims is, oh, that's the time of the Hanukkah. So see, Jesus followed Hanukkah. And the answer is no, he didn't. No, he didn't. Didn't say he did that. Said he was in Solomon's porch at the time of Hanukkah, of the festival of the lights. It didn't say anything about Hanukkah. It didn't say anything about him following Purim. Doesn't. The Jews today, they celebrate Hanukkah and Purim. The Catholic Church came up with the same exact dates to do their own, to probably, don't know this, but one of them would be to just cover it up with their festivals at the same time. So the pagans celebrate the sun on September the 25th, or Kislev, and the Orthodox Judaism celebrate Hanukkah during the exact same time, but they follow the moons a little bit, but same time. And then they also follow Purim to go against that. They kind of match their Purim time with what we call Ash, during the Ash Wednesday and during the 40 days before Easter. How interesting. They all came up with these pagan practices. And many Christian churches and many Orthodox Judaism follow 100% of these traditions of men and pagan holidays and try to make it some way of making celebration. I've even gone to a number of, unfortunately, Hebrew roots, and they do Rosh Chodesh, and they make a holiday out of it, a celebration time. It doesn't say that in the Word. It says you observe it. Why do they observe it? Because it's kind of important to know from one month to the next. And the millennium, it's mentioned in the millennium is happening. Why are the moon cycles mentioned in the millennium? Because it's important to know which month that one people are supposed to go up. You can't have 50 million people of the world coming in every once a year or twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. You can't have 50 to 60, 200, 500 million people coming in to Jerusalem. It won't work. So they'll be coming in, very obviously, they're going to be coming in on a monthly basis. They're going to have their time in, just like John the Baptizer, the immerser. His father was in the list of priesthood, and he had his set dates for 6 to 8 weeks where he would go into the temple and serve. And then the next set of priests would come in, and then the next set, following the moon cycles or following a month by month basis. That's what it is. It's not a holy time. It is Rosh Chodesh. It means new moon. It's another month. It just means March is here. I don't have a big celebration in an Orthodox synagogue or a church just because the moon's crescenting. If we want to do that, I guess we can go into Islam and other pagan religions that do that, right? Am I being, am I slamming people here? I don't want to slam anybody. I just want to say, look at the word, read it. I don't want to have to repeat myself over and over again and or start a church with a Sunday school class that every year at the same time we all have. Well, now it's February the 14th, so everything is dedicated to love and marriages and Mother's Day and Father's Day, and you do the same thing every year in church, and you wonder why people are leaving in droves in the church and their faith is just absolutely gone. Because the ministers, the pastors, the Orthodox, the rabbis, and the nuts out there trying to make a holiday out of everything are making it. Just like if I get on the calendar here, which I have a lot of calendars in front of me, there are over 275 special days set aside for every day of the year. So today is peanut butter day, and it's Be Nice to Your Father Day, and then 300 and some odd other special things you're supposed to do on November the 19th. You see where I'm going with that? It's nuts. It is nuts. Just like we live in the United States that has 400, 500,000 laws now. How many? And by the way, you're responsible for all those laws: federal, state, local statutes, local ordinances, city. It it never ends. It just becomes worthlessness. Becomes a lawlessness nation. It's a nation with no laws whatsoever, or a nation with 400,000 laws in which you don't know any of them. just You just want to cry. So all this information about sanctuaries and so forth, this is all for the future. This is the book of Daniel, very, very important because it does and bring up so many things that we need to know in the last days, up to chapter 12 here in the book of Daniel. At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress such as not happened from the beginning of nations until then. Just before that, in a couple of chapters, Yeshua even says, I am fighting the prince of this world and so forth, and the only one that's standing up with me is Michael. Yeshua said that. And it says, now here there will be a time of distress such as not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. There's the promise. There's some good news that the Father's given you here. And he's just telling you that multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame for everlasting contempt. When is that? Well, that's in the great white throne judgment. See how we're going? We're just flying through back and forth in the ages. Don't get too lost in this until you read it. Relax a little bit, and then read through the Bible just like beginning to end until you get to Revelation, and then all of a sudden it makes a whole lot of sense. But don't sit there and try to say, well, what if, and maybe, and so forth, and what if, and I don't know, and somehow, and if you want to see a bunch of people don't know what they're talking about, just watch the national news every day. One key word here. We got enough time. We are in the end of it. We are in 12:12. Blessed is the one who waits and reaches to the end of 1,335 days. Well, that's more than 3.5 years, isn't it? That happens to be a time of cleansing. There's the cleansing process I told you about that Mary had to go through before Yeshua was presented at the temple. And before they went to Nazareth, before, and then they went to Nazareth, and then they met the Magi there. They didn't meet him in Bethlehem. They met him in Nazareth, were warned, and then they went to Egypt. But your 1335 days means there's going to be a cleansing, blessing process that you must go through before Yeshua comes in to gather us home. Isn't this great? It's fantastic.